Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're playing Stockfish, but if it can give a check, it must. Thank you to Bullion for leaving this idea in a comment. If you have any ideas you'd like me to try, feel free to comment them down below. You can also play this bot yourself over on iwantcheckmate.com. My goal is to win one game. Let's get started with game number one. Alright, game number one. Before we do dive into the game, I'm going to point out the obvious, which is that I've changed the theme of the website, but no worries. If we go back to the home page, you can see that absolutely everything else is exactly the same, and if you click the theme button, if you really love the purple as much as I do, then you can go back and choose the purple theme. But for those of you that are a little bit less purple obsessed and do prefer the neutral color, you can go back to the sort of black theme. But anyways, let's go back to Checkfish. All right, as far as Checkfish is concerned, this should be a pretty straightforward victory because basically what I want to do is put my own king in danger and anticipate any upcoming checks, cover that square, and then basically the engine is toast. So for instance, if it eventually moves the e-pawn and puts me in check via b4, I can just anticipate that, play pawn to a3, and it will have no choice but to move the bishop to b4 and put me in check anyways. So I think concretely, even though this is a fun idea, this may be a bot that falls a little bit more into sort of speedrun category to see how fast can you beat this bot. There's bishop to b4, perfect. We'll go ahead and take that free bishop. Obviously a bishop advantage is not enough to defeat the world's strongest engine, but we can pretty much expect that we're going to get a whole bunch more pieces where that came from. Knight comes out to d7. The other thing I could technically do is play trappy, like queen to d2 for instance. Doesn't look like it's setting up anything, but I can now play king to d1, and it has no choice but to put me in check and give me yet another free bishop. So the bishops are off the board. We now get pawn to a5, which I'm sure is objectively a strong engine move, but unfortunately in this position just means that we're going to turn this a file into basically a pipeline of free pieces, at least to the best of my ability. So let's start, I think, by taking on a5. Rook does take back. Let's go knight to a3, and that's going to be my temporary blocker. I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. We are under attack on f2 though, so I'm going to take a moment to defend that. Wow, I didn't even think about that, but it does actually have to take on c3 because that is check. We'll go ahead and grab our free knight. Queen comes out to b6, and originally what I meant by a sort of blocker is that I was going to defend the rook and then move the knight out of the way. It would have no choice but to take, and then I can take back. We start simplifying the position, and in some cases, you know, if I move the rook far enough out of the way, I can remove the blocker anyways, and it still has to play rook to a1. Even though it's not a trade, I get a free rook, but none of that really matters because we get queen to b6, which means that I can literally play h3 and queen to b1 is forced. Oh, okay. To be fair, I did forget that it is going to still choose the strongest of the checking moves, so I guess queen takes d4 is probably its best bet because it does at least get a pawn in return, but still objectively a terrible move. We'll go ahead and grab that free queen. You know what? Let's attack Stockfish. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of throwing an honest attack that might actually defeat the engine against Stockfish. So I'm going to take this, and now again I have the luxury of queen to b2, which forces rook to a1, free rook. Now we have back rank mating ideas, which it does manage to defend, but I think I'm just going to play queen to a7. I don't really see how it stops me from just engulfing its kingside position. That is a free knight. Okay, so it's decided to defend the back rank mate by creating an escape square, but in the process dropped the knight. Let's take on g6, and then just all heck breaks loose here. We just dive directly into the position. That's a mouse slip. I meant to play queen to c7, but all roads lead to Rome, or all roads lead to ladder's mate, because we do in fact slide the rook over, getting my favorite type of checkmate found in the aftermath of Chernobyl, scribbled onto a little piece of paper. We do in fact get the notorious ladder's mate. With that, we do in fact defeat Checkfish, but I have a pretty interesting challenge. I wonder if I can defeat this engine by only moving my king around. Because hypothetically, I just need to put it in positions where it puts my king in check at close range, and then I can just capture it. So I'm going to start by developing my king. Of course, I've moved the e4 pawn, but I didn't really have a choice there because I have to get my king out somehow. But we get knight to f6. Now, the knights are kind of going to be the thorns in our side, I think, for this. Because you can imagine if I play something like king to e3, there's knight g4, puts us in check. But intrinsically, because of how the knight moves, there's no way that my king, if it's in check by a knight, can ever capture that knight. I think the best we can hope for is something like, I don't know, king to f3 targets the knight, and then maybe forces it to play like queen to f6, which is a check, allowing us to grab the knight. But more realistically then, it'll take on h2 and kamikaze the knight, which I won't be able to take back. Now, I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with all of this, but let's just develop the king and see what happens. Knight, ooh, sacrifices on e4. That's not even check. That's apparently just the best engine move to drag my king out into the center. Queen comes out because it has to give check. It's a little bit of a shame that we didn't get to see the follow-up. I'm assuming queen to h4, well, maybe queen to h4 was the appropriate follow-up. I'm assuming though it was something like pawn to d5 maybe, or maybe queen to f6. In any case, queen to h4, how do I move this king such that it has to keep checking me but loses the queen? I think I have to get rid of this pawn first, because if in that position I'd moved my king back to any of these squares, something like queen d4 or queen to f4 would have been supported by that central pawn. Oh, but now my king is stuck in the center and c6 is mate. Oh wow, okay, I got absolutely ragdolled. Okay, maybe it's not possible with just the king then. Again, I welcome you guys to try it out for yourselves. I kind of thought it would be possible, but it seems that putting your king in the center of the board not only allows check, but seems to also allow checkmate, which is not something that I'm particularly interested in walking into again. In any case, let's do it. How about this? I'm gonna try and win a game with just my king and my queen. That way I can actually use my queen to my advantage, and then, use the king more so as bait. Get the knight out to c6. I'm going to wait around a little bit first because there's not really much that I can do at the beginning of the game because it's going to be just developing, oh my goodness, all of its pieces. I've blundered a queen. The moral dilemma of whether or not I should take that out of the video and pretend like it never happened, but I'm going to take it to the chest and just admit that I am blind as a bat. Okay, anyways, back to my spiel. I'm going to develop my queen early. That way I control a whole bunch of squares, and then I'll lure my king out, or rather push my king out sort of as bait. But I have to be careful because if it coordinates all of its pieces correctly, I might be toast. Pawn to d5 is kind of a pain in the butt. I'll slide my king back. I'm a little bit nervous about losing my queen twice in a row. Let's slide her over to c3. Oh, beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I was just about to start another spiel about how we're gonna lure the opponent into dropping free pieces, but queen takes d2 I didn't even think about, but there it is. We'll take back with the knight. This is also reminding me a lot of 3-check, because in 3-check you also see these kinds of crazy moves trying to sacrifice in the name of just getting checks against the enemy king. I haven't played those variants in a while, but I really want to go back to them. Some variants like 3-check just because I miss them. Cross Derby I also miss playing, but other variants because I have some suspicious activities I want to get up to. I won't go deeper into it until I actually make the video, but for Tiny House I have some very interesting ideas that I want to try out. But in any case, we do get knight to c6. Now that I am up a queen, I can pretty much just play whatever. I can simplify the position. I can trade down so that my queen advantage is more felt. We'll go and take that free pawn, and this should be a pretty straightforward victory. Knight comes out to play. The problem is now, the more that it pushes pieces into my face, the worse it's going to be for it because it's just going to lose a whole bunch of material. So for instance, bishop to b4 pushes a piece in my face, but the problem is I can just block it and then it has to sacrifice the bishop, right? So now I just have another free piece. I don't really think this engine is one that I have to overthink. I think I can just play it like a totally normal game of chess, and just intrinsically it's going to drop a whole bunch of pieces like flies. Okay, one of these two rooks has to give check, but either way it's going to be a free rook. Oh, okay, bishop comes out to play first. Oh my days. Let me put that queen right back from whence she came. Queen takes b5, walks into rook to d1 check. The king can't move because the e1, or rather the e8 rook creates a fence. Knight comes back, rook takes checkmate. That almost just happened on camera. Okay, luckily I did notice it. Is there any way for me to stop this? c4 just walks into bishop takes, queen takes, and then we're back to square one. So king to g1, defends everything, forces it to lose the rook. That was shockingly close to being a disaster. We do grab this bishop, and we are in fact going to win this game, but holy moly, that was really close. This fish is teaching me about overconfidence and getting a little too excited about my position. Let's slide the queen over. Luckily, the rest of this should be pretty straightforward. The king is basically trapped within its own pawns, so I can just give it a whole bunch of checks, and then eventually, one of them is going to be checkmate. King does centralize itself, a very bold endeavor. Let's play check. I really don't care exactly how I execute this. I just need to, check it until eventually it's out of moves, and then eventually that will just be checkmate. Can I do this? That looks like fun. G4 check. King does take because it doesn't know that en passant is forced. Let's play queen to e6 check, run it into a corner, and then now we've just cornered it. And the cool thing is, oh goodness me, can I play check here? I can. Oh goodness, but then the king runs to f5. Okay, but now we've trapped it. The cool thing is that now because it has these queenside pawns, I don't have to worry about stalemate, so I can just walk my pieces slowly over until the king is crushed into a little tiny corner. We'll give check. Oh, that drops a knight. Okay, let's maybe not do that. Let's play king to f1. It's gonna run the king into the center of the board, and suddenly I don't have to worry about stalemate anymore because even checkmate has escaped my grasp. Okay, c3 targets the queen, but I can give this nice little intermezzo check and pick up that pawn. Again, still no worries about stalemate because it just has 1 million pawns still on the board, but it has just occurred to me that I could give a very fantastic type of checkmate. Very rare on this channel, but we do see it once in a blue moon, and when we do, it's always a celebration. We do in fact get my favorite type of checkmate discovered by a scientist after he discovered a new type of mask that allowed him to infiltrate the Chernobyl rubble, which allowed him to find a diagram. His name was Dr. Ladder. With that, we do in fact get Ladder's mate. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you again so much to Bullion for leaving this idea in a comment. I didn't name him Bullyfish, although I did think it was super duper fitting because I think there might be another broad strokes, rule that we come up with in the future that bully might encapsulate a little bit better. So I just went with Checkfish, although I did think it was a funny original idea, and I did think it was funny that their username was Bullion and the Stockfish idea was going to be Bullyfish. I did think that was a funny little coincidence. But anyways, if you guys have a different idea that you'd like to see me implement on the site and try out for the channel, feel free to comment it down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. And also, if you have any other thematic ideas for the website, feel free to comment them down below. I'm more than happy to listen to what the public prefers. I have a lot of big ideas for this site in the long-term future, so even though I am just currently building it up with these little bots so you guys can play against them yourselves, I do have big plans for the site in the future. So leave any funny ideas in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.